Well, hello, everybody. It's Casual Wednesday here at Broadcast Team Alpha, and welcome to Broadcast Team Alpha, where we bring you cutting edge conversations while exploring the quantum possibilities. I'm Nori. My brand is Nori Love. I am here with my amazing co host, Aage Nost, and we have a phenomenal guest for you, one who is in such demand that we're bringing him back tonight. And we're going to be, talking about those guys that have the long red robes, and sometimes they have those big hats with the crosses and the incense. And we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. But before we do, I'd like to invite you to connect with us. Connect with us at broadcastteamalpha.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to hit the little bell in the right-hand corner so you will always know when we go live. And we also have a new function called a super chat. So if you would like to support the ongoing broadcast and broadcasting of this show, we would appreciate you supporting us that way. And if not, we just appreciate you supporting us by being here, telling your friends about us, and just adding energy by virtue of listening to the photon packets that we put out tonight. Aha, somebody tried to cut in.
Yeah.
I think it's the ETs.
They know already.
So thank you for being with us. Aage, how's it going?
Oh, wonderful. We're
Excellent.
we're gonna have so much fun tonight. We're gonna keep you on the edge of your seat tonight because Jim Nichols is back with Broadcast Team Alpha. And for those of you that know him, you know he's a friend of mine, and he is right here in Tucson. He is an artist, a UFO investigator. He's a lecturer, a videographer. I think that's a word. He's a TV host and radio host. And one thing that impresses me with what Jim does is that when he creates a video documentary, he researches the heaven out of it. And I didn't expect that one, huh? And what you will find in there is actually the facts behind the story. And today we're going to be talking about extraterrestrials and also something that ties it directly into the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church has had a lot of problems lately, and we couldn't help it. We just had to help them maybe lose a few more supporters. So we're going to do and see what we can do about maybe spilling some of the bean, what's really going on behind the curtain with the Catholic Church also, as well as talking about an extraterrestrial connection that keeps very good tabs on them. So I want to welcome Jim Nichols back to the show.
Yay,
hello, Nick.
Welcome, Jim.
Wow, thank you. It's always a pleasure to chat with you folks, and I hope we can have some fun this evening.
Yes.
Talking about the Vatican and exopolitics, the possibility of an extraterrestrial reality, and that the impact of that on human society.
Yeah, and when you think about how ET has interacted with humans for 1,000 years, I bet since 325, when a little bit after maybe, when the Catholic Church was formed, until now, that's a long time, and I am almost sure there's a lot of connections between ET and the Catholic Church.
Well, I think there's a lot of connections between ET and religion, period, across the board.
I want to hear more about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, for start, are either of you Catholic?
No.
Either of you raised Catholic?
I was raised Catholic.
You were raised Catholic. Okay.
But she's a recovering Catholic now.
Oh, Aage.
Well, maybe not.
Okay, we have to be good here. This is not This is not intended in any way, shape, or form to be a put down of the Vatican or the Catholic Church or any of that. It's
right.
I put together a blog, which you can find on my website, jimnicholsufo.net, which I think is called The Vatican and Space Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not really intended to be about the Vatican so much as theology and extraterrestrials. And I did, a couple of years ago, I did a video. This blog is actually, it's a script for my the video that I produced. And I showed this video to my group at Quantum Horizons here in Tucson, and they've seen just about all 30 of the videos I've produced. And of all the videos, this was the one that got the most hostile reaction.
Really?
Really. And it was because my sense is that there's a latent hostility. The public has a latent hostility toward the Vatican and toward the Catholic Church. So it was written and it was produced in a way to be as absolutely neutral. It's not pro-Catholic or anti-Catholic. It's just I was not raised Catholic. I'm not personally, I don't have a Catholic background, but I do have a fundamentalist Christian background, and you cannot separate the two. If you look at the history of Western civilization, our perception of God and religion and theology and extraterrestrials, they're totally interwoven together, and you can't separate it. So I think a lot of my audience was fundamentally hostile toward the Catholic Church, and I think they were angry because I wasn't hostile toward the church as much as they would have liked me to be. But that was not my game plan. It's like I wanted to. It was kind of a companion piece to Ancient Aliens. It's like, well,
interesting.
How did we get these ideas about religion and theology and so forth in the first place?
Yeah.
And then how did those ideas become codified into what we know today as Catholic theology or Vatican theology, and how has that evolved? So that's kind of that was my intention, and it's amazing that what it can stir up problems, especially with religion. And that's, if you really look seriously at disclosure, that's one of the main stumbling blocks to disclosure. Is like it may step on somebody's toes with regard to their belief in God and theology and so forth. So
I don't know how for that not to happen. Even
I don't either.
If we don't talk about religion, that happens.
No, you can't separate the two, because if you go back to the time, to prehistory, and where ancient Egyptian history, ancient Babylonian, ancient Judaic history. There's so many stories of supernatural beings that came down from the sky and interacted with, the people of that time. And then those stories are preserved in legends and so forth, and they become embellished over the years to where they become religions. And the challenge is to separate, fact from belief, and what really happened back then. What did these people really experience? Was it the planet Venus? Was it swamp gas? And what the other problem is, like, we as humans, contemporary humans today in Western civilization, we don't put ourselves back into that mindset. Imagine that you're Abraham from the Old Testament, and you're sitting out there in front of your tent, watching your sheep grazing, and somebody pulls up in front of your tent in a Lexus.
That's so funny.
Okay, and they get out of that car and they light their cigarette with a cigarette lighter, and they start talking on their smartphone.
Yep.
How do you think a primitive from Bronze Age civilization would react to somebody like a contemporary human today? Think about it.
That's a great visual. I mean, that's a great example.
That's how God would show up, wasn't it?
And it's like, well, how would he describe the thing you're driving around in?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, the most sophisticated machine at that time, transportation machine, was a chariot.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, maybe it's got 4 wheels. 4 wheels that are turning around and around. You know, you just think back, try to put your mind set into that kind of a primitive context. And what if you landed in a helicopter? I mean, stuff that we just take for granted. It's like,
absolutely.
So what? It's just a stupid helicopter. To Abraham and Isaac and Jacob,
right?
You would be a god.
Right.
You would be a god. And if he saw you talking on your smartphone and your smartphone started talking back to you, you think, oh, they're talking to the gods.
Exactly.
Yeah. You get it? So it's like, I'm trying to put contemporary human into that context. And, we would be the gods. Amazing. We would be worshipped as the gods. And so anyway, that's one of the problems, is the mindset and the language. They had no language to describe sophisticated technologies, right? So,
I think that the parallels to that actually probably did happen in some of these, especially when Moses supposedly went to the top of the mountain. He saw this burning bush, and burning, it could have been possibly strong light. It could be anything from a spaceship or something there. So
exactly, and if it was an electric light, it would have been seemed to be burning, but with little heat, no smoke. So like, it's like, anyway, this is the groundwork that we have to start out at. And but the other thing is, the ancient people of the Bronze Age, they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have internet, they didn't have television, but they spent a lot of time looking at the stars. So much time, in fact, that they began to understand the movement of constellations, the seasons, and the fact that in the wintertime, when it got cold, everything started to die. And you can imagine there being a panic that they think the sun is dying. So we have to start worshiping the sun to make it come back. Please come back. And restore the seasons, restore the seasons of harvest and so forth. So
and they prayed to the sun for 3 or 4 months, and they were successful.
Right. So, and when we go to church, what day do we go to church on? Sunday. That's a throwback to ancient Rome, when they decided that the Sunday would be the day that we worship the sun, Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. This was established during the Roman Empire. So a lot of these orthodoxies and so forth evolved out of astrology, astronomy, and the seasons of the year, the seasons of harvest and so forth. And The other problem was that there were so many different ethnic groups all around the Mediterranean that all had their own individual concepts or theologies that became religions all over the empire, and it was that became a problem for governing as Rome became more powerful, and as Rome became more multicultural. It had the problem of coordinating and managing this vast empire that stretched from England all the way to Africa, and with all these multiple cultures, multiple religions, and at some point it became virtually unmanageable for the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So along comes Emperor Constantine, and it's like, well, we're either going to see the empire collapse into total chaos, or we have to find a political device that would unify the entire empire politically. And so he was either inspired, or he was a smart enough politician to say, wait a minute, it's as if we could consolidate all of the different ethnic groups throughout the Mediterranean under a single political religion, the empire would be more easy to manage. Okay? So the Catholic Church, the modern Catholic Church that we have right now today, is an incredible anachronism because it's linked to the political structure of the Roman Empire. It's like in a microcosm, it's the Roman Empire still alive and well and functioning today in modern 21st century planet Earth.
It is.
Okay?
Yeah.
So like it or not, whether you like the Catholic Church or whether you don't like it, it doesn't matter. It's like this theological political unit has survived for 2,000 years. So to me, I love history, and I love the concept of the linkage between extraterrestrials and how that has evolved into religious thought over the centuries, to where today we don't connect the two. We see them as totally separate. But I mean, you go back to maybe the Tower of Babel in the Old Testament, how God or Jehovah, whoever, influenced human society and controlled human society and manipulated it in a way that created such diversity throughout the Mediterranean world. He changed the languages. So it's like, is that a god, or is that an extraterrestrial who's involved in terrestrial management of terrestrial civilizations? Okay. One of the things that Graham Hancock stated that I think is so important, he says, my sense is that we're missing a huge part of the human story. I think that it's quite possible, indeed probable, that we are a species with amnesia, that we've lost the record of our story going back thousands of years before so-called history began. And I think if we could go back into that dark epoch, we would discover many astounding things about ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of theories, about that, about agreeing, to lose our memories, and yeah. So I love this.
So,
and what Emperor Constantine, when he decided that he needed to unify the empire, he looked at the Jews. And he said the Jews, they never fought among themselves. They were all united, and they helped each other. When one was hurting, they all stepped up to help him. And there were no problems, no fights, no wars within their unity. And he says, I wanted that for my empire. So he told 223 people to go to Nicaea and He told them, as it says in the writing, go to Nicaea and create a religion that will unify my empire, and do not emerge before you have done so. And they did.
Okay. Yeah. Council of
Well,
Nicaea, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
mhm.
Constantinople, Turkey today.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I
So,
want
well,
to,
yes. Sure.
I want to know if, like, you know, down in the secret room where, celebrities and maybe even the cabal and people in robes. I want to know if there's ETs down there, smoking a couple of Cuban cigars, or, I mean, are they all mingling? What's going on?
That's anybody's guess. I'm sure you've seen the movie Angels and Demons, where
Yes.
they go in the Vatican vaults,
Oh my
and
goodness.
they say, you can't help but marvel at what kind of secrets are hidden there. And the other, it's like in Egypt at the time of Jesus, there was a Gnostic sect that was living there, and they had scrolls and codices that they had buried and hidden, and that were not destroyed at the fire of Alexandria. When the Library of Alexandria was burned, a great deal of human history was lost, and I don't think that was accidental.
Interesting.
I think that was part of the deal to consolidate political authority in in one venue, which would be in the Vatican. So the Vatican would have control over the whole humanity's whole perception of itself, right? But some of these codices were not destroyed. So there's a whole nother sideline there of Gnostic teachings that that they suggested that the man Jesus may himself have been an extraterrestrial. That he was, and he admitted that he says, "I am not of this world." So it's like, okay, that sounds like ET to me.
Yeah.
But
Actually, when I did
that bothers a lot of people, though, and I understand that.
When I did the research on one of my books about spiritual science, then I found a document that dates back. I think it is something that it touched to the I forget exactly, but they say that there were no record of this Yahshua Bet Halachma before he was 5 years old.
Right.
He just showed up. So
well, there's great controversy on whether we really have a genuine historic record of this man at all. Yeah. And it was the Council of Nicaea that really took fragments of gospels and so forth and really created the Vatican version of who Jesus was. But my question is that really the authentic Jesus? Whoever, they argue that Jesus was a complete fiction and he never existed, but I find that difficult to believe because his teachings had already become so popular in Judea and Turkey and so forth that it was making headroads into Roman orthodoxy, Roman religious orthodoxy at that time, and then they tried to stamp it out, which it was unsuccessful. So Constantine says, well, if you can't find them, join them. So that's where they created a political theology for the entire empire with this rabbi, Yeshua, being the center focus of that. So
yeah, and for the people that say that he never existed, actually there is some surviving Roman records, including the wanted poster that they put out for him before he got.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they called him the Messiah, which is the Messiah, and he was on the wanted poster. He was listed as using 3 names. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, those names are actually available. So yeah, no, there is enough information knowing that there was this man that actually the religion was modeled after. So you're
Well,
exactly right.
I find it very difficult to believe that there is not a specific individual,
Yeah.
very enigmatic, very charismatic individual who was at the core of the story of Jesus. And I think he was real enough to make a powerful impression upon the that part of the world at that time.
Yeah. He was a cool dude.
I'm sure. I am sure of that. But you know, ETs, you know, extraterrestrials. I mean, they've kind of been, you know, woven in either secretly or not so secretly, you know, into religion. I mean, right. With our last show that we had with Jim, we didn't really get to talk about Billy Myers, right? And the vision, or Jim, tell us about that.
Um, uh, let's before we get into that,
Okay.
I kind of wanted to make a shift here because how they had to create a political religion, and Jesus was an amalgamation of all the pagan, all the popular pagan religions throughout the Middle East. So it was an amalgamation of Isis and Horus, and you can look up all through the ancient histories and the ancient theologies throughout the Middle East, and they all have like a Jesus story.
Yep.
And it's like, so I see at the Council of Nicaea this very, very smart approach to making a Roman religion that would be comfortable and would even include the holidays of some of the other pagan religions throughout the empire. So it was, the way it was manufactured was really kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
But but it makes problems today in that so much of religion is about extraterrestrial or supernatural beings coming from the sky and influencing humanity. And we turn around and worship them, right? But within ufology, the problem is, and this, I ran into this, you know, in my own first marriage. It's like when I got interested in studying the Billy Meier case, my wife at the time said, "Yeah, I believe that extraterrestrials are real." She says they're all demonic. I said, "Wait a minute." I says, "On one hand, you say all these divine beings come down from the sky and influence humanity over centuries, and now if somebody sees a UFO today, you say, oh, they're demons." So, where is the truth in any of this? Do you see what I'm saying? How do you decide, you know, who are the angels and who are the demons?
Well, I'm personally, I think you decide based on maybe what you were brought up with,
Yes.
you know, maybe what
Yes.
you've studied, maybe that which you have had a transcendental experience with. And you know, that's why I am still, you know, I was brought up Catholic, and I have no issue having these conversations. You know, I am a Trinitarian. I don't take offense to any of this, because I love exploring the quantum possibilities, and I don't feel like we're denigrating or, you know, insulting anyone or anything. So believe what makes your heart happy, you know, believe what ignites your soul.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this became, you know, a point that ended my first marriage. Is that
Wow.
my wife, who was a Seventh-day Adventist, was absolutely adamant
Oh, that was tough.
that all UFOs or extraterrestrials are demonic. And I thought, well, you know, maybe some of them are, but I can't imagine that God would create a universe where at least aren't some of them angels? Aren't some of them benevolent? Aren't some of them the good guys? And it's like, I have to find this out for myself. I can't just because, this church or that church says, makes some kind of blanket statement that they're all good or they're all bad. It's like, no, I have to find this out for myself. I have to understand this phenomena for me.
Could you hear a question, and if this isn't a good time to answer it, we could answer it later. But I just wanted to do a shout out to the chat room. Hey, everybody. So good to be connected with you again. Finally, we're together. But Shady D said, what will happen to religion, once ET is validated?
Well, I think that's where this whole discussion is headed.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch the movie Angels and Demons, which is so poignant.
Such a good
it's
movie.
The Vatican is poised on a tightrope where it has to maintain its authority in a world that's more and more materialistic and science oriented. How does this church stay relevant in a world of science and materialism? And that's the challenge the church is facing right now. And but what's more is how does the church stay relevant if ET lands on the White House lawn?
Well, they have that big lasagna dinner and invite everybody over, right? I mean, right?
Let's party. Okay, now I'm going to flip that around, though.
Okay.
I'm going to flip that around. What if ET lands at the Vatican? What if ET lands at the Vatican? What if ET gets out and personally talks to the Pope?
Yeah.
What happens to the White House? What happens to our government? What if ET would show preference to the Vatican?
There goes the church and state trouble again.
Wouldn't that rattle somebody's cage? Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
So religion and extraterrestrials or exopolitics is one of the hottest potatoes socially on the planet right now. So people say, "Oh, why don't they tell us the truth?" Well, how do you handle it when there's a billion Catholics worldwide?
Yeah.
And if their religion was suddenly to become irrelevant overnight, that would be problematic.
Well, I don't know. I can't imagine it would become irrelevant. I think there could be, a really massive rollout of damage control because, I mean,
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Really fast disclosure because and we're being acclimated right now.
Yes.
Like I mentioned to you before the show, normally I don't watch TV and I stay in my little high vibrational bubble, but I've been out in mainstream with a lot of mainstream people and they're all talking about ETs. Everybody's kind of like waiting and poised and joking, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, I think people are ready.
Well, they're ready for something. They've been,
Be careful what you ask for.
How many years has Ancient Aliens been on TV? I mean, you talk about getting acclimated or prepared.
You think we're a little slow? Is that why it's been on so long? I don't know.
But yeah, are we going to break for a commercial here?
No break.
Just keep going. No break.
We just keep going.
Oh, baby, just keep on rolling here. Okay.
I mean, unless you'd like to break, I can.
No, not at all. No, I just before I get up ahead of steam here.
All right, let's roll.
I didn't want to get interrupted. Okay.
Yeah.
The Vatican, had a long-standing posture that was very anti-science and so forth, and it was Giordano Bruno that was burned at the stake, centuries ago for even suggesting the possibility that there may be other life in the universe. He spoke of a plurality of worlds, suggesting the possibility of extraterrestrial life or aliens, which the church adamantly refuted and, burned him as a heretic in 1600.
Yeah.
And it's bad enough. And poor Galileo, he was held in, he wasn't burned at the stake, but he was imprisoned in his own home for suggesting that the Earth revolved around the sun. So, and it wasn't until 1992 when Pope John Paul II made an apologetic attempt to redeem Galileo by stating his persecution was an error of tragic mutual incomprehension. I mean, talk about a weak excuse. But things are changing. Things are changing.
And it's changing fast.
If you will find that today within the Vatican, most of the astronomers, most of the science-oriented priests and so forth are Jesuits.
Yeah.
Jesuits, and it was Ignatius Loyola who founded the Jesuit order, who demanded scholarly, scientific levels of education for the members of the curia, of the church. So today we have something called exobiology. And once upon a time, the Bible once said that thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's the old Judeo-Christian value.
Right.
And but let's see, I'm gonna find the date here.
This is really great, by the way. I just wanted to thank you.
Okay. In November 2009, the Vatican hosted a conference on astrobiology, and the French physicist Pierre Lena, who set this up, says astrobiology is a mature science that says very interesting things that could change the vision humanity of itself. And the church cannot be indifferent to that. And one of the things, the changes they were talking about, was the discovery of extraterrestrial life. And one of these Jesuit Vatican experts was Brother Guy Consolmagno. And he made the statement that we may soon look to the aliens to be the saviors of humankind. Now that's a whopper doozy. Consolmagno argues that humans are not the only intelligent beings God created in the universe. And he says these non-human life forms are described in the Bible. And he starts by pointing to angels, then referencing the Nephilim, and also quoting John 10:16, which stated, "And other sheep I have which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and they shall be of one fold and one shepherd." So there's some really, really interesting people over the last decade within the Vatican that have really brought this to the surface. One of them was Monsignor Corrado Balducci, and he died in 2008. But he stated very emphatically that extraterrestrial encounters are not demonic, they are not due to psychological impairment, and they are not a case of entity attachment. But these encounters deserve to be studied carefully. And it gets even better. Now we have Father Giuseppe Tanzellaniti of Opus Dei, a theologian of the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome, states, as every believer in God would greet an extraterrestrial civilization as an extraordinary experience and would be inclined to respect the alien and to recognize that our different species both originate from the same creator. Okay? And that this would give us a better understanding of the relationship between God and the whole of creation if we encountered extraterrestrials. So, for me, I don't have a problem with that. It's like you can't put a limit on God's creativity. So if God created Earth humans, logic says, well, why couldn't God create intelligent beings in other worlds?
Yes.
And I talked about the angels and so forth, that they live in a different realm than we do. So is that, are they in another dimension? Are they in another planet? Whatever they are, they're not terrestrial. So that makes the obvious assumption. And Father Jose Fuentes, Jesuit astronomer and director of the Vatican Observatory, says that as a multiplicity of creatures exist on Earth, so there could be other beings also intelligent, created by God. This does not conflict with our faith because we cannot put limits on the creative freedom of God. Okay?
So we are exploring the quantum possibilities.
Yeah,
and then some. And then some.
And then some. And now this is where it kind of all goes sideways, where they say, well, what would happen if ET came to the Vatican and introduced a whole new set of gospels? What would happen? To say, wait a minute, what? And that the old Vatican teachings would become heresy. And this is where it gets really good. All right, you got it. That says it all right there. Researchers Chris Putnam and Thomas Horn published a book called Exo Vaticana, and these gentlemen are both fundamentalist born-again Christians, and they are very concerned about this new posture within the Vatican, because their concern is that to not believe in the existence of aliens and be willing to accept their morally superior dogma, that may well be the true heresy of the future. So you will be a heretic if you're unwilling to accept this morally superior and new form of the gospel. Yeah. So
that just got messy.
Yeah. So it's
yeah.
Anyway, it seems that the Vatican is definitely positioning itself to be in a better place in case ET does show up.
The Vatican,
to stay relevant. The kicker is the Vatican wants to stay relevant in a world where ET reality may become commonplace.
Yeah, and I know the Vatican has done a lot of research in this arena because they have this observatory over by in Arizona on top of Mount Graham there. And in the mid-1995, several years there, I used to drive from Omaha down to Safford in the winter and kind of vacation a little bit. And I got to know one of the guys that worked at the observatory. And I tried to kind of entrap him a little bit by asking him some questions.
Was this the Lucifer telescope?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay, go ahead.
The Lucifer telescope. The name says it all. But I asked him, what they were looking for. Are you looking for extraterrestrial life? And he said, yes. He agreed. We are looking for, rogue planets. And he mentioned a few things. And then I asked him, did you find any extraterrestrial life? And he said, yes. But I couldn't get him to say anymore, to talk any more than that. He agreed that they have found extraterrestrial life. Now, the question is, what kind of life can you see with that kind of telescope? You can see maybe spaceships, you can see structures maybe on
Did
planets.
He describe the structure or how unique the Lucifer telescope really was?
He talked very little about that, but
right.
he didn't want to say much because he wasn't supposed to. That was early in the days because it was pretty classified.
Right. Okay. Well, the Lucifer telescope happens to be one of the world's most sophisticated and largest binocular infrared telescope, which means it can see out into deep space and it can see things in 3D that we cannot see through a telescope with our normal vision, because there's a lot more stuff out there that's visible in the infrared spectrum than is visible in the normal human range of vision. Okay, so and let's tie this to a comment from theologian Father Malachi Martin, who died in 1999. He was a former Jesuit, but before his death, he was on Coast to Coast with Art Bell. And he made the statement that because of the mentality amongst those who are at the highest levels of Vatican administration and geopolitics know what's going on in space, and what's approaching us could be of great import in the next 5 to 10 years. So Malachi Martin was convinced that the Vatican knew there was something out in space that would be of great significance to planet Earth in the relatively near future. Now, what that could be, whether it's a spaceship, whether it's Planet X, whether it's the fabled Nibiru, is anybody's guess.
Yeah. Well, we know there's something's coming because it's been disclosed that there's a huge planet coming in, and then it went dark. They don't talk about it anymore.
Well, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story. So anyway, do you want to skip back and talk a little bit about the Billy Meier?
Yes, absolutely. There is a story here that is not being talked about hardly at all, and I think we should.
Well, there's a number of stories that kind of got passed over.
Well, that's why we've asked you to come on frequently now.
You betcha.
Thank you.
Because there's another story that during President Eisenhower's ET contact in 1954, that a member of a Vatican official was present at that, and that he went back and told the Pope what happened with President Eisenhower, and then later, I think it was Pope Pius XII was actually met by extraterrestrials himself.
Wow.
So there are stories that, yeah, well, guess what? Leaders of around the world, whether they be popes, whether they be presidents, whether they be archbishops, ETs do stop in and say hello once in a while. So it's like ET is always somehow in the shadows, keeping an eye on what humans are up to. Okay.
Some closer than others.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, Billy Meier had an experience. Wendell Stevens was present in August of 78. I'm sorry. In August 1978, Wendell was at Billy's farm in Switzerland when Billy got contact. And Billy had been sick all day, but late in the afternoon, in fact, it was later in the evening, Billy got a message that he was going to have a contact. So they got Billy all cleaned up, all dressed up. He packing his gun and his walkie-talkie, and he heads out the door, and it's pouring rain. It's pouring rain. And Wendell is like, I got to see this. I got to see how Billy has a contact. So Billy goes down this narrow corridor and steps out into the rain, and Wendell Stevens is about 4 or 5 steps behind Billy. Billy goes out the door closes, Wendell grabs the door, opens it, and there's no Billy. Wendell looks down on the ground, and there's like 3 footsteps going off into the mud that are slowly starting to fill up with water, but there's no Billy anywhere. Okay. So about 40 minutes later, they get a call, and Billy's on the other side of the valley, and he's just waiting to be picked up. So they get in the van, and they go across the valley, and they go pick Billy up, and he's standing in this little bus stop shelter, and it's still pouring rain, and he's completely dry. He didn't have a drop of rain on him. So they pack him in the car, take him back to the farm, But Billy is very concerned, is very disturbed because he was shown something or told something in his contact that was very, very disturbing to him. And he refused to talk about it to Wendell until the next day.
Mm.
But according to Billy, he claims that he saw this take place on a view screen inside the beam ship, inside the Pleiadian spaceship. But Pope Paul VI was going to bed, and he was being served his tea at bedtime. And what Billy saw was a cardinal, when the Pope was not looking, put 2 drops of a clear liquid into the Pope's tea. Well, by morning, the Pope was dead of a severe heart attack.
Mm.
Okay. And it was supposed to be a very fast acting poison that left no evidence.
Mm.
Billy was told that this particular Pope, had found out there were irregularities in the Vatican banking system that he was going to blow the whistle on. Well, he never got a chance to do that. So this Pope was succeeded by Pope John Paul I. And if you look at pictures of John Paul I, he looks very hale and hearty. He looks very healthy. He doesn't look the least bit sick.
Mm-hmm.
And he became one of the quickest popes to gain office in history. He was one of the shortest conclaves of the Catholic Church. He was elected on the 3rd ballot, and he reigned for another 33 days, only to die by the same hands of poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this had not happened yet. Billy told Wendell this was going to happen. And Wendell said, well, crap, this will be, if this actually takes place, this will be confirmation that Billy is getting, accurate information from the Pleiadians.
Right.
Well, as it turned out, Pope John Paul I died just exactly the way Billy told Wendell.
Mm.
And he was followed by Pope John Paul II, who was elected from outside the Vatican hierarchy to make sure that he would not be involved in Vatican banking skullduggery.
Mm.
And they said if he did try to involve himself and investigate problems within the Vatican bank, that he would die just like the others. But he did not. And Pope John Paul II went on to be one of the most popular popes in Vatican history. But this is one of the most incredible stories that Billy Meier,
Wow.
of the Billy Meier investigation that Wendell was able to share.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
at the time, Wendell was just absolutely shocked. He says, you just don't kill popes. You don't murder popes.
Yeah, you think.
And I said, this is 1978. And I said, we were not used to stories of Vatican scandal in 1978. This was unheard of. But today, we become so callous to it with the stories of pedophilia and irregularities in the banking system and so forth at the Vatican, that it's no big deal today. But in 1978, this was absolutely shocking.
Absolutely.
Absolutely shocking.
But it's not news to me because 2 decades ago, or 2 to 3 decades ago, I was in that arena working with banks like this. And the stories that came out about the Vatican Bank were horrendous for their corruption.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so.
Yeah. That needed a deep breath.
Well, maybe ET needs to land, at St. Peter's, and say it's time for you boys to clean up your act.
It's not out of the realm of possible.
Not at all. Not at all. I always said if disclosure comes, it will probably come from the Vatican first. I've always said that.
Yeah.
That it will, because it would be most shocking to disturb people's religious views, and if ET you know, came with a theological slant, it might, soften, at least for the Vatican, it would soften the negative impact it would have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
I've been saying for quite some time that I doubt that ever there will be a disclosure from government, any government, possibly ET themselves, or maybe the Vatican.
Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I tell you though, I knew Wendell Stevens. He lived in Tucson too, and he became a good friend of both you and me, Jim.
Yes.
And I visited him. I interviewed him 3 times on my TV show. And when we did that, he wanted to have a ride down to the TV station. So I usually went over there early, and we sat and talked an hour before we went and did the TV show. And some of the stuff that he told me about some of these things, and including that story you just told here, he
Yes.
also told
Yes.
me.
Right.
And I tell you, there is some phenomenal information that I think we could talk for 3 weeks and not repeat one of them.
Well, this is Wendell went to Switzerland to debunk Billy Meier. He saw the pictures in 1976, and he said, "No, these are too good to be true." He says, "I want to go to Switzerland and prove for myself that they're fake."
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it. He couldn't prove that they were fake. And he says the more he got involved with Billy, and the more he got involved with the research or the investigation, the more convinced he was that this something really legitimate is going on here.
Yeah.
So, is this how ET used to do it in ancient times?
Well, here's a couple of questions pertaining.
Sure.
From Global Enlightenment Radio Network. With the Billy Meier story, he mentions a view screen. Well, that technology is ancient in today's world for aliens. It would be of super lesser races like the Neanderthal type. We are now in 3D and have other tech. Ask Jim if he believes that part about the story, or is that just story that proves mind control?
That is so subjective. I can't answer that.
Yeah, too subjective.
That's way
okay.
too subjective.
And they said it would be like ET using C&P telephone to call home.
Well, maybe that's the way those ET works. You're making a broad assumption that of what ET technology would actually be.
That's
and it's
true.
Like, how many ETs have you ridden around with?
Yeah.
So,
and there's also
when Billy did say that the images he saw were in 3D, and they could see into the future and they could see into the past. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Whew. Well, that was.
Well, anyway, if at a future time,
yes,
we could talk about the Vatican connection with President Eisenhower's ET contact.
Oh, I look forward to that.
That would be interesting too.
James McIntyre, Catholic Bishop of the Los Angeles Diocese, was also present at Eisenhower's ET contact, and this bishop was sworn to secrecy. He was sworn to not divulge this experience in California to anybody, but he chose to. He says, "This is too important. I have to tell the Pope." So he broke his oath of secrecy and got on a plane and went to the Vatican. So that's a whole nother story.
Wow. Well, we're going to book you for that if we may. Please and thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, but also let us know where people can get a hold of you, can buy your videos and your documentaries and your website and email and so on.
Oh, you want all that?
All that.
Well, just
hang on a sec. Let me run this by you right now.
Okay.
I did. You can go to Jim Nichols UFO video. This is my personal UFO YouTube channel. And if you go to Exopolitics Course 3, the Vatican and aliens. You'll see a thumbnail video about a lot of the material we talked about tonight. Okay. Or you can go to jimnicholsufo.net and access my blog and blog The Vatican and Space Aliens, which covers all the material and a lot more that we talked about here tonight. And you go to my website jimnicholsufo.net, and there's all kind of blogs you can read. And I have lots of videos at Jim Nichols UFO Video, so that talk about lots of different topics. Beautiful. Regarding Mr. ET and so forth.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And
well, thank you.
I'm excited to have some more discussions and just, see what turns out to be predictions, or, who knows what this is that we're talking about.
Really, for sure.
Right?
So,
well, I think we can predict something is about to happen. That should be.
I don't think humans live in a vacuum. I think the ETs and I know Nori, you're into a lot of spiritual teachings and so forth. I think humans, there are beings out there that maybe won't jump in and just fix things the way we'd like, but I think we are being watched very carefully.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they're in the spiritual arenas, in the vast spiritual arenas, there is a what would the word be? A wave, right? It's like somebody opened the door and said, okay, now this is okay. And many, 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 many people are now channeling entities, channeling beings, channeling councils of light beings. So absolutely, it's happening everywhere we look if we choose to look.
Well, that's because we are multidimensional beings ourselves.
Yeah.
That was my secret. I can't believe you just threw me under the bus.
Not at all. No, you're right where you belong. That's great, because that's
so
that's one of the secrets of disclosure. That's one of the things that they don't want to disclose, because they don't want you to realize that how powerfully multidimensional you are.
Exactly.
They want us to think we're just we're these organic robots, these helpless organic robots that are clunking around, walking into each other. It's like,
right, because we're looking at our phones.
Bingo.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
sure. Absolutely.
Well, this was so interesting, and I'm so grateful to spend time with you again. And I look forward to the next time. And Aage, you want to say a few last words?
Yeah, we're gonna have you back on. I think we just talked a little bit this afternoon. I think we got 2 dates in mind, but I don't have the calendar here, so I don't see it. But we will make sure that it gets up on YouTube and on Facebook and places, so you can see when the next one will be. This will be interesting.
Very good.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Katie, to our producer, and thank you to all of our friends and listeners, and to all of our ETs. We know you're there. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Right. Thank you.
Take care.